Hi, I'm Dr. Rudy Cashman. Welcome to our show. As you know, we have two shows a week, one at 7 o'clock on Mondays for a half hour, and then Wednesdays at 6 o'clock on public access. And soon we'll have a radio show. And what's my gig? Wellness. The mayor has called me probably Dr. Wellness 10 different times, so he knows what I'm up to. I was in neurosurgery over 40 years, but I noticed the majority of patients I was seeing needed a wellness coach. They didn't need all the fancy things I was doing, so I became interested in this and started reading about it, writing about it, and of course saw thousands and thousands of patients. My main subject at this time really comes down to preventing, stopping, and reversing diabetes, because that's what a good 90% of the illnesses that we see are based on. Visual changes, blindness, vascular disease, heart disease, lung disease, strokes, memory loss, dementia, 70% of cancers, skin diseases, bowel diseases, frankly, complications of type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes. And what I'm saying is, and it's based on a lot of literature, many books, which I'll mention to you, and I want you to participate in your health care. My Wheel of Wellness, I have about 8 spokes on it. Number one is you must participate in your health care. So I want you to gather information, read some books. You can go to cashmanhealth.com. I have on there 120 previous public access TV shows for free. You can watch them on YouTube. It's directly connected, and really learn a lot about this illness and many other illnesses, gluten, for example, and become knowledgeable. You must become knowledgeable. Incidentally, if you decide to follow this path, then let your doctor know and know the effects that eating healthy might have on your medications you're taking, because your blood sugars will drop quickly, within a few days if you eat the way I recommend. And I'm not recommending a diet, just a different way of eating. And I firmly believe you could get rid of type 2 diabetes, improve type 1 diabetes, 30 days, get rid of it, the type 2, not the type 1, the type 2, 30 days, 90% of the time. It's true, it's true. It's opportunity and opportunity, yet it is not well promoted throughout the community, but many books have been written on it, and the National Committee of Physicians, a vegan society, they recommend it. I've worked with all these famous physicians. The latest book that I read is Goodbye Diabetes. Goodbye Diabetes, by Dr. Youngberg. Excellent book. And I've written books on it. It agrees with 99% of the things I've been speaking about. I met him when I was at Hilton Head recently at a hotel, and it's a fascinating book. And what does he say? Goodbye, diabetes. This is what I'm saying. When you think of all the complications of type 2 diabetes that I already spoke about, and about 30 more. And I saw a gentleman yesterday walking down the hall at a business I was in, and he'd had some visual changes. I mean, a lot of diabetes in the family. He said, what do you think? I mean, he's in the early stages of diabetes, probably advanced microvascular disease, and all that could be prevented, stopped, reversed, 30 days. So let's go on with our talk here. It's a world epidemic. It's not just Fort Wayne or Indiana. It's across the world because we're eating the wrong food. I'm not going to recommend a diet. No way. I'm going to recommend that you eat nutrient-dense food. We explained that in more detail. In this country, we probably have 150 million people who are pre-diabetic. 90% don't even know it. I see it all the time. If you're 5 to 10% overweight, odds are you're pre-diabetic. And most of the complications of type 2 diabetes, including blindness, unannounced heart attacks, occur in pre-diabetes. Probably 40, 50 million people have already been diagnosed but I think as providers are not motivating them well enough to change. You say, well, the people don't want to change. I don't accept it. I don't believe it. I took a 360-pound individual truck driver from 360 to 210 over a year's time that I had met at Planet Fitness where he's working out. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And most of us don't need to lose that much, just a little bit. And we think this illness is going to double in the next 10 to 15 years unless something is done about it. So it's about education. Let's go on with the music here and have a little fun while we're doing it. It's frankly about simple lifestyle changes, but eating the right food, maybe walking a half hour a day. We'll go into more detail. You hear about lately about sitting disease on TV a bit. Well, what's that all about? Sitting disease? Well, to me, that's the way to cause our lifestyle changes to get rid of diabetes from being perhaps overweight. You want to lose a few pounds because it's easy. If you take the total calorie burn, say right here, the calories you burn in one day, 50% is based on our size, our age, and our sex. Can't be changed a lot. It's the calories burned by our lungs, our heart, our bowels, our brain, our muscles while doing nothing. That's basic metabolic rate. It can be actually calculated exactly, and I know the formula, and it's a little complex for television. And that's 50% of our calorie burn. Then we have the energy used up, calories used up, and the thermic effect of food, which is 10-20%, and I'll explain that in more detail. And the rest I call activity of living, AOL. The Mayo Clinic had written a book by Dr. John Levine, excellent book, Move a Little, Lose a Lot. He called it NEAT activity, non-exercise activity thermogenics. Seems so complex. They own the name, so I decided to use their own name, activity of living, AOL. So if you increase your activity of living, like dancing, walking the dog, standing up while you're on the phone, things like that, you can burn a lot of calories. I personally think if you eat a nutrient-dense diet, 80% fruits of color, say you can add mushrooms and onions, for example, and because that food is water-dense and has a lot of fiber in it, you probably will absorb only half the calories if you eat that way. Yeah, and if you increase your activity of living, weight loss is easy, and you can kiss your type 2 diabetes goodbye. So let's go on. So what I'm talking about, 70-80% plant-based diet, raw foods, 50% of food maybe should be raw food. Try to cut back on meat products because one thing, if you know how they're raised, they feed them fatty, genetically modified corn, put them in a cage, put pesticides on them, and you're eating the darn stuff. So let's cut down on that. Maybe 20%, and you could be well. You follow the principles of sitting disease. So no diet. I didn't say diet. Let's review the complications of diabetes for a minute. All sorts of eye changes, retinal changes. We have in our body about 300,000 small blood vessels, the microvasculature, the little vessels throughout our whole body, retina, feet, skin, everywhere, about 300,000 miles of it. Yeah. And the other major vessels, maybe 60,000 miles of it. But diabetes to sugar causes vascular disease. Sugar's the booger, okay? And is the one that our bodies are on fire. So the presenting thing, illness many times is visual loss, retinopathy, retinal detachment, hemorrhages in the eyes. That can be the first symptoms before any diagnosis, even a pre-diabetes. The other thing is numbness in the hands and feet, or an unannounced heart attack, sometimes unannounced stroke. A lot of bowel diseases caused by diabetes. And David Katz in his book, Disease Proofs, that 60%, I think higher, of cancers due to type 2 diabetes, being overweight. Yes, because the insulin which goes up in diabetes causes cancer. Yeah, causes dementia, memory loss. A lot of dementia that we've seen, type 2 diabetics, not Alzheimer's disease, it's vascular disease, and sugar combining with protein being deposited in the brain causes dementia. Very common, can all be avoided. Okay, so defy the verdict. Don't deny the diagnosis. Significant number of people don't want to be tested. They just don't want to know. But if you do this, your increased death rate, you may die in your 40s and 50s. Remember, you read the other day that people in the 40s and 50s, death rates are increasing. You think it's just because they're 45 or 50? No, because they got pre-diabetes or diabetes. That's why they're dying at a younger age. They're eating the wrong food. They're eating the wrong food. So, and remember, I'll review a few books for you in a minute. Remember Dr. Youngberg, Goodbye Diabetes. Okay, accept it. 30 days, goodbye to it. My friend, Dr. Furman, Eat to Live. Dr. Furman, very famous, used to be in PBS a lot. You see him a lot on Dr. Oz's show, for example. End of Diabetes is the name of his book. End of Diabetes. I wrote a book on eliminating diabetes myself on Amazon, Cashman. You'll see about 20 books I've written. My last book just went on Amazon yesterday. It's called The New Slavery. Yeah, sugar. At the bottom of the book, people in handcuffs. We're addicted to sugar is a problem. Franklin House wrote a book years ago, The 30-Day Miracle. He ran a camp in Arizona that he get rid of your diabetes in 30 days. He ran it for 30 years, then he retired. It's a very interesting story in this book on Goodbye Diabetes. Dr. Youngberg went to Guam, the island of Guam years ago. He was asked to be a guest speaker because 90% of the people living on the island of Guam near Japan became a diabetic. Why was that? There used to be very healthy people. Well, what happened is they discovered phosphorus on the island, and they all became rich. Everybody got a cut of it when the companies sold it all over the world, and then it ran out, and the companies went away, and now they're poor, and they were taught by the workers and the Westerners how to eat different food, and they became extremely obese, and they all developed diabetes. Dr. Youngberg went over there to study that and figure out they was eating the wrong food. Yeah, when he switched them to the way of eating I spoke about, it clearing up, but the people don't want to change because they're addicted to sugar. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So this is a very interesting story on Guam. A lot of people know about it. So, and there's a path to type diabetes. It's diabesity, as we're slowly gaining weight, and it can be done quickly. You know, Super Size Me, the movie you've seen, a guy did it went to a fast food restaurant, ate nothing but their food for 30 days, gained 30 pounds, became advanced diabetic like that. His body became on fire. Then he switched back to vegetables, and it all went away. Dr. Youngblood went to, in his younger days, from eating the wrong food to good food, and then back to bad food, and then eventually to plant food, very healthy now. And he's part of the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda University out west, Utah, where the majority of the community follows a vegetarian diet. Did I say vegetarian? No, I didn't say that's what you had to be. I'm saying that's what they do. And I accidentally ran across them when I was at Hilton Head. About 600 doctors were gathering the Almond Society from all over the world, and they take religion and vegetarian diet and bring it across the world. And those 500 doctors walked by me that day, including their families, and in African dresses, and it was fascinating. Everyone, including their children, looked very healthy. It was like God dropped them in that day to teach me something. That's where I met Dr. Youngblood. And so what is sad is the majority of Americans are being tested wrong. We're catching them at stage 3 or 4 diabetes instead of early pre-diabetes. And I'll tell you the test I want you to get in a minute. So what is Dr. Youngblood saying? You're going to be cured of your diabetes? I think it depends how you use the word. Dr. Furman used the word cure. Dr. Youngblood used the word cure. I mean, if you get rid of it, I personally think if I went to a fast food restaurant and ate nothing but their food for 30 days, I'd probably be type 2 diabetic. And then if the right food went away, does not mean I'm cured. You see the point? That's not even worth discussing. And but you can avoid these complications very quickly, 30 days. 30 days. So 90% of the people can get rid of their type 2 diabetes, improve their type 1 diabetes. See, the majority we speak about type 1 diabetes you think of largely of children, but it's turned out now that 90% of them are adults. And the reason is, before we diagnose somebody with type 2 diabetes, that's where you make too much insulin. Type 1, it was the pancreas gets attacked by an autoimmune disease or a virus. Sometimes gluten does it, sometimes milk products even does it, yeah. People don't know that. Eat whitewash by Keon. If you read that, if you drink cow's milk after that, I would be surprised. I don't know to tell you that. Read about it yourself. Whitewash by Keon. So type 1 is not enough insulin, in that Banting and Best invented insulin in 1920 or so. That saved those people's lives. So the trouble is now, because of insulin resistance, which is we have 70 trillion cells. Every cell is on these receptors, okay? And these receptors in the people that are overweight are occupied by triglycerides, and insulin, whose job it is to bring sugar into the cells, can't do it because the fat is blocking it. Insulin cannot unlock the door. So the insulin level goes up, sugar is still normal. So the pancreas just pumps out more insulin to push sugar in because you need it for energy, ATP. Without ATP, you'd be dead. No ATP, you're dead, okay? And the pancreas poops out. 50% of the pancreas usually is gone time most type 2 diabetics I diagnose today, yeah. But the good news is that it can be revived by switching to 80%, 70% proper way of eating. Yes, but there are a few which totally dead, and they will always need insulin. So none of this we're speaking about today is 100%, okay? But the earlier you catch it, the much more likely for the pancreas to come back. So this is very important, this early diagnosis. What are the stages of diabetes? You speak to many providers. I don't understand the reason, because Atkins put in his book in 1995, Atkins' book. I don't, in the end, recommend his way of eating. In the end, it's too much meat. But he's the first one to say at that time the sugar is a booger. And the American Heart Association, the NIH, the CDC, Ansel Keys, the Monroe Commission, the government is telling us it's the fat. It wasn't the fat. They knew better, too. Fat doesn't raise the insulin level. It's the sugar that raises the insulin level. They were just wrong. They knew it. 40 years. Don't believe me? Read The Big Fat Surprise by Nia Hyholtz. It was all over the papers recently. The Big Fat Surprise by Nia Hyholtz. Read that. It outlines the whole story. And I tell you, you'll almost vomit when you're done reading it, because they have really brainwashed us. And it killed a lot of people, disabled a lot of people when the truth was out there and it was hidden by the people that I mentioned. Don't believe me? Read the book, Nia Hyholtz's book, The Big Fat Surprise. A great book for you to read. So blood testing needs to be done early. I personally think blood testing should start at age 1. You know, the American Heart Association says, well, starting at age 35, then every 5 years. Baloney, baloney, baloney. You'll miss all these cases. Remember I said the complications, sudden unannounced heart attack can occur in pre-diabetes. We're diagnosing stage 3, 4. So what did Atkins say? Stage 1, insulin resistance. Stage 1, where you can't get the sugar in there, but the blood sugar is normal. But the serum insulin is elevated. But we just pull that, when we screen people, we pull fasting blood sugars. I don't have diabetes, but I weigh 250 pounds. Baloney, baloney, baloney. They need to check the serum insulin. And the way to check that at that time, the best way to do it is through a 2-hour glucose tolerance test. You swallow 75 grams of sugar, and they pull the fasting blood sugar and the serum insulin, half hour, 1 hour, 2 hour. And from those results, you can pick up early stages of diabetes. The fasting blood sugar may be normal, but the serum insulin is at stage 2 of diabetes. Fasting blood sugar, still normal. Yeah, we're screening 5,000 people at General Motors, and that 200-pound guy, fasting blood sugar is normal. Was the serum insulin checked? No, that's not part of routine screening. They talk about cost, but cost is coming so far down that's irrelevant. And the disease is much more significant. But at stage 2, the serum insulin would be elevated without a glucose tolerance test. Stage 3, the fasting blood sugar and the serum insulin elevated. And that's where we're diagnosing people today at stage 3. But remember I said, a lot of the complications occur in stage 1 and stage 2. You get my point? If you want to read more about it, read Mark Hyman's How to Speak to Your Doctor, 72 pages, meant for a layman to read, meant for a doctor to read. I printed it off again this morning for somebody I met yesterday who had visual trouble, and explains in layman's terms the tests you need to get for proper screening. Really good advice. And I mean, the HbA1c is also used, and it has value. That combines the proteins and sugar over the for about 2 or 3 months. But it's better to use for see what your control is. It doesn't change in a lot of people, still stage 3 or so. Occasionally you see it in stage 2. So it's not it's a screening test. It helps catch the ones in later stages. But in earlier stages, I want you to get a lipid profile, okay? And get either, and the Mark Hyman, he used the NMR test, which tells you the size of your LDL, whether it's a very small size and acts like a little pellet that's going through your arteries, and every crick and crack it hits, it causes vascular disease, okay? How many of those you got? Those are the bad ones. Your LDL, the bigger one, is a little volleyball, you know, kind of going through the arteries, not causing a lot of damage. We spend all our time handing out drugs for LDL, but it's a very low density LDL that counts. The big one is some relevance, but the cholesterol theory of cause of vascular disease is going down. Yeah, it's still a little bit part of it. It still has value as a screening test, but other important thing would be a triglyceride HDL ratio is a good one, and a CRP, C-reactive protein, which tells you whether there's inflammation in the body. And but if you pick, so if you do a HbA1c test, which 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes. Diabetes is 6.5 and up, and you like to have around 5 if you can as a routine screening test. Remember I said, though, it's not a good way to catch it very early, okay? If you've had gestational diabetes, where you had diabetes during pregnancy, they check you like at 28 weeks, run a glucose tolerance test. If you have that, odds of you becoming diabetic extremely high, and you should have yearly screening after that. They don't really do that, and that's a major mistake. If you're a woman and you had that and you're overweight, you're pre-diabetic, 99% chance. So act on that, okay? Act on that. 18% of pregnancies have gestational diabetes today, so that's pretty significant. And remember I said 90% of the type 2 diabetics eventually become type 1. Their pancreas dies out, and now they need insulin shots. Yeah. So most Americans are metabolic mess. They have insulin resistance. You should have the thyroid checked too, because that can be abnormal in diabetes, much more thyroid disease, much higher rates of cancer, especially uterine and ovarian cancer and breast cancer with diabetes. You have to really be aware and be checked on that. And remember what I spoke about, memory loss. They speak about type 3 diabetes. It's that the sugar combines with proteins and makes deposits in the brain and affects nerve conduction. And people with type 2 diabetes are much more likely to have significant memory loss problems. Okay, that needs to be stopped and can be partially reversed. And an HbA1c of around 7 or so, I think, represents a blood sugar of around 149 or so. And then it goes up 30 points for every increase in your HbA1c. Like if you have HbA1c of 10, you're an advanced diabetic, for example. And the CRP test, the screening test, I think is very important. One of the early signs of diabetes can be elevation in your blood pressure. That and thyroid disease. So diabetic screening should be increased in anyone with elevation of blood pressure, especially if they're a bit overweight. Insulin, incidentally, doesn't just bring sugar into the cells to get ADP. It causes arthritis. It causes dementia. It causes vascular disease. It stiffens your arteries. It causes significant arthritic changes, skin changes. It causes cancer, increased rates of cancer if your insulin level is up all the time because you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. And so what does genes have to do with it? I tell you, the majority is what's in your genes, actually, what you weigh. But there is if there's strong history of diabetes in your family, you're more likely to get it, especially type 2. But what the problem usually is, they're all eating the wrong food. I saw that at a restaurant recently, a Tapanaki restaurant. I went to a Japanese restaurant, and the whole family came in, and they all faced me on this long table from grandchild to grandpa. Everyone overweight. I would guarantee they all got diabetes. I would also guarantee probably hardly any of them know it. And I'm talking about 6-year-old kids. Yes, this can occur in little children. Actually, insulin resistance, they're finding out, and I spoke to Dr. DeFranzo, who wrote probably 1,000 papers on diabetes, myself on the phone, who's the one that the Atkins 5 stages of diabetes, that he did it from DeFranzo's work. So there's scientific basis for this. So, but Dr. DeFranzo was saying that diabetes begins in the uterus. We speak about epigenetics. Hardly anybody has heard of that. You can change 95% of your telomeres, the ends of your chromosomes, by what you put on your fingers, your fork, and how you use your feet. So what the parents do before conception affects the zygote, the cell, or the fetus, and then what the mother puts in the fingers or forks and how he uses the feet, whether she's smoking or drinking or what she's eating affects the infant. And so diabetes can occur in infancy and not express itself till years later, or the child is born underweight or overweight. So what have genes got to do with it? A gene loads the gun, but what you eat pulls the trigger. You got it? Genes may load the gun a bit, but what you eat pulls the trigger. I've also found, and this is great news, if you read Deep Nutrition by Shanahan, that there's biomathematics, and Mark Hyman writes about it, in the genetic structure, the food you eat, and I saw it in the truck driver I spoke about, I went from 360 to 210, is the genetic structure of the vegetables will rearrange your body and put the biomathematics in there and turn you beautiful again. You don't believe it? Look at my website, cashmanhealth.com. I have pictures of 3 people who lost over 100 pounds. They look like movie stars. Yeah, the genetic structure, the biomathematics, the Fibonacci numbers of food did it. Yes, I think this is a picture of the truck driver too. That's wonderful news. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. So Dr. Dean Ornish ran very famous for preventing, stopping, reversing vascular disease, published 20 years ago, did studies on prostate cancer patients and found that through high-dense nutrient way of eating, he could increase their lifestyle and help prevent prostate cancer. Read that. Yeah, not many people are aware of that. So genes don't kill people. It's unhealthy choices that are killing people. Other famous authors that have written about this for years, and once you know what I'm speaking about, is well published throughout the literature. John McDougall, a simple cure is possible for almost eventually everyone for type 2 diabetes. This is John McDougall, direct quote, Dr. Furman book, End of Diabetes. Certainly there's some debate going on about it, but the American Diabetes Association is still speaking about fat being the cause. I read the 800 pages on their website 3 times, so I know what I'm talking about. They 61 lectures you got to go to. They're teaching it here, I think, at one of the places. It's not that difficult. You eat 80% vegetable, fruit type diet, 20% organic meat products, walk a half hour a day, and the disease be gone most of the time. It's not that complex. Let's do something simple. You know, exercise incidentally is important. Dr. Youngberg especially stresses right after you eat, if you walk, say, for 15 minutes or do some, get on the treadmill, whatever, that improves the metabolism of food so much that health improvements really speed up. Yeah, you would generally speak, you know, walk half hour a day or maybe lift some light weights, because for every pound of muscle you gain, that burns 50 calories a day. Yeah, isn't that great? But exercising right after meal, if it's okay with your doctor, very effective for health improvement. Dr. Youngberg really stresses that, and I believe that. So the prevailing dogma is once a diabetic, always a diabetic. Baloney, baloney, baloney. Okay, except for the few type 1s and the few that become type 1s that were type 2, where the pancreas is totally dead. You can't turn things around. But if you're a type 1 diabetic, for example, and you had it since a child, and you're taking 80 units of insulin, for example, the body only needs about 20. So if you're eating right, so the type 1 diabetic needs to take care of himself. Maybe you need only 20 units. And then if you get only 20 units of insulin, you're less likely to get dementia. See, type 1 diabetics, on the average, let them die in the 50s. But if you eat the way I'm speaking about, probably live to be 100, be a type 1. I know of a doctor recently that did that. And he was perfect in his exercise and the way he ate. Wonderful practice of pediatrics, I think it was. And lived to be 102, I think it was. And a very healthy individual. So it can be done. So the prevailing dogma is incorrect. And Dr. Ornish, Dr. Esseltine, Dr. Bernard, Dr. Katz, Dr. Furman, Dr. Hyman, Dr. Lustig, Dr. Cashman say so. Let's get to work. Let's get to work. Not all can be cured. I told you that the pancreas could be totally dead. So we spoke about the path to diabetes. I already spoke about yearly testing. And if you're overweight and they say you don't have diabetes, you probably had the wrong test. Read Hyman's work, take it to your doctor, become informed. Participate in your health care and be demanding. You have to participate in your health care. Number 1 of my 8 things to wellness. Number 2, incidentally, is nutrition. Number 3 is exercise, okay? And demand your child be tested, okay? Demand your child be tested, even if they're skinny. I know a person in town, pretty well-known construction person, that child go to excellent school and everything, but was eating at a fast food restaurant every day, and they didn't know about it. And when the pediatrician, a very wise man, pediatricians should be wellness doctors, and this guy was, I think it was Dr. Ferrula, who does it on a regular basis, checked the child's blood work. It was like an advanced diabetic. He corrected the way he ate, and within a month, blood work was normal, okay? So get your children tested early. You know, you say, well, we don't test them until 35. No, you run these blood tests even if they're skinny and exercise regularly age 10. 25% of the people with type 2 diabetes are of normal weight, especially Asians. Incidentally, people from Africa, Asia, especially the Japanese, South America, blacks have higher rates of type 2 diabetes because of epigenetic changes that occurred decades and hundreds of years ago. They have the thrifty gene. They're much more likely to get this. So if that's in the history, start testing people earlier. Get a test done. You're any of these racial groups or ethnic groups I mentioned, and you're 20 years old and you're 20 pounds overweight, get tested for diabetes. You get diabetes, you get pre-diabetes, but it can be prevented, corrected quickly. Do it, do it, do it, okay? And so we need family history, HRA testing, you know. Family history is the history of this in the family that increases the incidence, a little bit of genetics, but more of what their habits are. So we need the nutrient history, the weight, the exercise history. Are you tired, sluggish, numb, have visual problems? Incidentally, impotency precedes diagnosed diabetes generally about 3 years. Yeah, generally about 3 years. Because of, you know the answer already, microvascular disease. If there's history in a family of stroke, skin problems, and the ethnic histories. So, and to catch the warning signs, especially visual changes. Can't just, you go to an organ doctor, he so specializes just in this part of the body, he may not say, you know, I wonder if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. Well, you may say, my fasting blood sugar was normal, and leave it at that. No, I think especially diabetic, that ophthalmologists need to know a lot about diabetes. A significant number of them do, but are they all pushy? No, it's not the way it's taught in their specialties or in medical school. Frankly, I talked to a medical student, a girl had about a week to go, and she couldn't tell me the chemistry of sucrose. I wouldn't have given her the degree, and I told the head of the med school that causes 90% of the illnesses, and the med schools need to wake up and teach the students how to prevent, stop, and reverse type 2 diabetes. They all got to know it. And so what are the odds of developing diabetes or pre-diabetes? Age 12 to 19, pre-diabetes 16%, 20 to 39, 18%, 40 to 59, 34% pre-diabetic, 60 to 74, 36%. As we get older, we do increase the incidence of type diabetes in the older age group because we don't metabolize sugar as well, and we develop a little bit of insulin resistance. You can be of normal weight, and the reason being is that because we're not exercising, our muscles are going away, but we're substituting fat. We may weigh the same. I've gained no weight, but we're a different person, okay? Remember, each pound of muscle metabolizes 30 to 50 calories per pound, doing nothing per day, based on your basic metabolic rate. If you eat a vegetable-type diet, you increase your basic metabolic rate and burn a lot of calories. Remember I said that testing is becoming a lot more cheaper, so you can go around bargaining a bit. For example, I think Arthotech runs the VAP test. That's advanced fat particle testing. That includes the particle size, and LabCorp, I think, uses the NMR, like Mark Hyman, tells you the particle size of your LDLs, your HDL, your CRP. These are the things you want to know. The HDL triglyceride ratio. You want to know the number of small particles and the size of the small particles, because that's what causes atherosclerosis. And we've already discussed, remember, Dr. Atkins talked about 5 stages of diabetes, and Dr. Hyman added a 6th. The odds of a provider knowing those stages is rare. I don't understand it. I fault the medical school. I don't understand it. They don't know these stages because we want to catch you before stage 1. We want to catch you on the path to diabetes if that path is going to develop. That's what I'm trying to do. So testing, testing, testing. If you have significant weight gain, believe me, you're on the path. Don't close your eyes. I was at a fair recently, and literally significantly overweight people. There's a judgment-free zone. I'm just trying to help people walking by refuse to get the blood test done. They don't want to know. But what happened? But they're exposing themselves to increased rates of cancer, vascular disease, unannounced heart attacks, and probably the last 20 years of their life is called the daily activity of their life. They'll be disabled. They'll be in a wheelchair. They'll be in a nursing home. They'll have an amputation done, which I didn't mention earlier a great deal. Wounds don't heal from diabetes, and people will have a toe amputated, then the ankle, then the knee, and before you know it, and let them walk on their joints because they develop numbness, neuropathies in their joints, and they're walking with their foot frankly bent back like this. How much do you think that hurts? Unbelievable pain. Go to some of the restaurants around here. Open your eyes. I can name 2 right off the bat, which I won't, okay, because I go there just to observe a little. But, you know, if you bug the waiter, usually they bring you something good, and they do. I see people with amputations and canes. Most of those are complications of diabetes, unfortunately, okay? And so fat distribution also makes a difference. If you're apple shaped, that means the fat's in on the belly area, and it's usually in your organ, in your heart, in your liver, in the hip. If the fat's in the hip, it's a little friendlier. But fat now they're talking about is a gland. It secretes about 20 cytokines, causes inflammation in your body. So fat is not something that sits there. It's not, you know, and it feels good, it feels nice and soft, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm telling you, it makes 20 nasty chemicals, increased rates of cancer, increased rates of diabetes, increased rates of vascular disease, increased rates of arthritis. Yeah, it's the chemicals in fat. So fat's not a friendly thing to have around you. But we have the skinny fat people, remember? Some people are perfectly thin, but they have some fat around the abdomen here or in the belly, especially Asians and certain ethnic groups. Koreans, when I gain a lot of weight, but there are tremendous rates of diabetes there now. If you're from Vietnam or Korea, watch out. Saudi Arabia, tremendous rates of diabetes. 90% of the nation, Saudi Arabia, is overweight. I've been there. I saw it. I was asked there to give a talk. So these are all avoidable. So to start screening people at age 35 is ridiculous. Okay, let's do it early. Let's review a few more. Some simpler tests you can run if you don't want to go through any of this. Okay, for example, let's do just a routine. If you can go to the drugstore, buy a little sticky thing, and a glucometer where you measure the blood sugar, you could do it yourself, and just put it routinely. Don't even pay attention whether you ate or not. And if you have highly elevated blood sugar, that means you clearly must participate in your health care and get going. Okay, and the glucose tolerance test I spoke about is the most accurate, where you swallow some sugar. And but the glucose tolerance test, remember, fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, at the 1 hour level is the most accurate. If you're greater than 155, odds are you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, okay? The 1 hour is the critical test. But a lot of times they may not pull a serum insulin. Pull a serum insulin too, and if that's elevated too. Okay, remember I said blood testing has become very cheap. Within a year or two, the cost is dropping all the time. So go shop a little if you feel you can't afford it. When we consider it, you go with a complication, you go to the hospital and amputate your leg. What do you think your bill is going to be? Okay, so to spend a little bit of money getting tested, make sure you don't have it. If it's all negative, don't get mad at me. Say, I don't have diabetes. I had it 20 years to my life. And if you do have it and do something about it, I had it 20 years to your life. Okay? Okay? Act, act, act. Another test you can run is called the Coke jelly bean test. Give yourself a do a glucose tolerance test on yourself. You know, eat about 400 grams of nasty sugary stuff. And check your blood sugar at 1 hour and at 2 hour and see what happened. And that's another way. You get a glucometer in the drugstore. So you can actually do it cheaply. It's not the best way, but it's another way to do it. And if you just put a random blood sugar and it's greater than 200, whether you're 8 or 9, greater than 200, odds are you're diabetic. Okay? If you have symptoms of hunger, weight loss, unexplained weight loss could be you're becoming type 1 diabetic, okay? So it can be weight gain, it can be weight loss because you're peeing out the sugar. You get advanced disease and your body's getting rid of the sugar by you urinating it out. That's typical of type 1, but type 2 can do it too. Increased fatigue, blurry vision, impotency, increased rates of cancer. I see a lot of cancer around, which I think is due, frankly, related to the insulin, type 2 diabetes. 70% of uterine cancer is due to being overweight. Rarely do I speak to a woman that knows it. Rarely, unfortunately, do I see cancer doctors significantly teaching nutrition to their patients. They may call it a nutritionist, but they themselves need to get involved because cancer is a sugar feeder. Cancer lives on sugar. So to switch to a high-dense nutrient way of eating, even if metastatic cancer can make a difference. Remember what I said about Dean Ornish and prostate cancer, for example? I told that story to a man with metastatic prostate cancer, even a friend of mine, but he refused to read his paper. Our minds are set. We don't want to participate. It's shameful. Because he was a wonderful man. He's not alive today. And so would it have made a difference? I don't know, but it could have. Dean Ornish published about it, okay? So we talking about the level of the HbA1c, for example, you want less than 5 would be optimal. 4.5 to 5.6 would be normal. 5.5 to 6.4 is pre. And with each point, the blood sugars go up about 30 points, okay? Dr. Youngberg will talk about blood sugar stages, and he puts it into about, not just talking about the stages of diabetes, insulin resistance, etc., but he, in his book, will put down the blood sugar levels as things progress, and that table is in there. I think it's a little complex for a TV, but it's worth reading. So this is interesting here. How could you evaluate whether your pancreas is still working or not? That's interesting. And that's the C-peptide test. It will tell you whether your pancreas is dead or still fully alive. It's not routinely done, but I think this has value. Let me give you some samples of results here. Do about a 1 hour glucose tolerance test, or you could maybe yourself do the cookie jelly bean test. No, let them do a 1 hour glucose tolerance test. And if your C-peptide, which is related to insulin secretion, is less than 2 ng per mil, you have a severely damaged pancreas. If it's 2 to 4, there's some damage, and is 4 plus is functioning very well. So if I diagnose you, or someone diagnoses you with pre-diabetes, you have a C-peptide test, and you're 4, your diabetes probably in essence is totally preventable, stoppable, reversible, and some people would use the word curable, unless you start eating bad food again, okay? You eat the nutrient-dense way, you're probably cured of the problem. Isn't that wonderful news? So the C-peptide test, I think, has some value. I would get that done. What's the state of my pancreas? Did they diagnose me so late my pancreas is dead? I mean, the pancreas is dead, well, then you probably will need to take some insulin the rest of your life. But if you eat right, it'll be the small amount of insulin. And remember, insulin causes dementia, arthritis, increased rates of cancer, inflammation, stiff arteries, atherosclerosis, heart disease. So in spite of needing insulin, eat a nutrient-dense way, exercise regularly, you'll be getting the least amount of insulin. So let's summarize things a little bit here. Check with, if you could decide to change, if this is your problem, notify your doctor. And if you eat the nutrient-dense way, 70, 80% vegetables and fruit, maybe at most 20% meat products if you feel you need to, and you eat this way, the changes in your blood sugar, say eat half the food you eat is raw. Rudy's plate, for example, would be 1/2 non-starchy vegetables, 1/4 starchy vegetables. The other quarter could be some nuts and organic meats if you need to. You'll be very healthy. The blood sugars will drop quickly. Franklin House used to take away all medications in a week, cut the insulin levels in half in a week or two. Yeah, and maybe off most of the medications within a month. Dr. Furman would say within a few months. There's variability of this, but get that glucometer out and check your blood sugar much more commonly for a few months while you're undergoing this radical change, and then get this plague off your body. You've eliminated most causes of sudden death. You've probably added 20 years to your daily. In other words, the last 20 years of your life with a normal brain, no amputations, no canes, playing sports, dancing, walking down the beach, having a wonderful life. And I encourage you to, my next book coming out, probably I'll finish this month, 8 weeks, it'll be on Amazon. It's called Sitting Disease. And I think sitting disease, the way I think about it and the way I explain to you, this will be on YouTube incidentally. You can pick this on YouTube probably within 2 weeks, so you can listen to it again, is that you'll be much healthier quickly. The disease will be reversed quickly. It's not years from now if you follow this. Did I say diet? I never said diet, okay? Never said diet. Just eat the nutrient-dense way, all you want. The vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals, the enzymes that are in vegetables and fruits of color, including mushrooms and onions, which don't have color. Those phytochemicals run the machinery of your body. They run the machinery of your body and will make you well. It takes so much energy to metabolize that. They burn up a lot of calories. And most of the vegetables are water-dense, fiber-dense. Fiber goes out in the stool. Water doesn't, you'll urinate that out eventually if there's too much in your body. That if you eat 1,000 calories of that type of food, you maybe take into the body 500. If you eat 94% of fat diet, it all goes in your body. It's just going to increase your weight further. and then learn, keep track of your AOL, your activity of living, from standing up when you're on the phone, from walking the dog, from dancing, for while you're doing the dishes, sing a song, be happy. Learn to cook. One of my shows, I'm following this one actually, I'm going to have a cooking show to teach you how to prepare nutrient-dense food. 30% of the people claim they can cook. It's 15%. It's maybe 15%. This, unfortunately, is the way it is. Not to be critical. So, and it's not that hard. You need to learn about smoothies and juicing and raw vegetables, how healthy that is. And some people need a detox. You know, we're addicted to sugar. I mean, let's face it. I go home, I'm stressed out, and there's a donut laying there, which I don't allow in the house. But if it was laying there, you bet I'd be eating it, okay? It's a quick thing to my brain that makes me feel just great. Sugar is addictive, So you got to get over the sugar addiction. So if you kind of detox for, 3 to 4 weeks and eat a lot less sugar for 3 or 4 weeks, but the way to get the phytochemicals and vitamins and minerals into you quickly is frankly through juicing and smoothies. If you're diabetic, I'd use a smoothie. Why? Because the juices will have more readily available sugar, and juices are absorbed quickly into the bloodstream. Matter of minutes, and your blood sugar will spike up quicker. So diabetic, and check the blood sugar. See where you're going. I'd say smoothies, but those phytochemicals will run the machinery of your body, and a great thing to have for breakfast or lunch, maybe juicing twice a week, and smoothies some of the other days. That's how you get those healing phytochemicals in your body that run your machinery. You'll be healthy very quickly. So start reading more about raw foods, and make half that plate, non-vegetables, raw food. And learn how to use blenders, for example, many different types at different prices. So thanks for listening to me, though, and I think you got it. Type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes can improve, type 2 can be eliminated the majority of the time, but you must participate in your health care. Come to our free lecture at Newfoundland Hospital once a month on reversing diabetes. Look at CashmanHealth.com, YouTube. We've got CD-ROMs, 20 books on Amazon you can get pretty cheaply. You must participate in your health care. You must gain some knowledge just to accept that you're not healthy and accept these 20 years of disability or sudden death. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I understand it's a judgment-free zone. But if you follow us on the radio, on the TV, read our books, read other books, become knowledgeable, you'll have a very happy, healthy, long life, and your family will appreciate it. Your children will do the same. And I do this because I love you. Namaste. Have a nice Thanksgiving and a nice holiday season. Feel free to attend our lectures and give me a hug and say something.